Hello and welcome to News Across Nigeria. I'm Olumide Macaulay. On the program today, lawmakers at the Nigerian Senate oppose proposed sale of national assets as way out of current economic realities. The federal government commenced the introduction of contributory pension scheme 12 years ago, as former President Chief Olusegun Obasanjo recommends safekeeping of pension funds for prompt payments to retirees. And the Kwara State government insists on turning the state's fortunes around, launches Infrastructure Development Fund, complete abandoned projects in the state. Thank you so much for joining us. Members of Nigeria's upper legislative chamber have rejected the proposed sale of Nigeria's assets by the federal government as a way out of the current economic recession. At the beginning of the legislative proceedings for the week today, the senators passed a recommendation opposing the plan. In his address to the lawmakers last week, the Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, recommended that the executive should raise capital from the sale of the nation's assets and other sources to shore up reserves. Dr. Saraki explained that the sale of those assets will calm investors, discourage currency speculation, and stabilize the economy. Meanwhile, the lawmakers have approved a recommendation that the National Assembly shall amend Section 162 of the Constitution to give legal backing for the executive to save money for times of economic slump. In the northwestern part of the country, the governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, believes a sale to boost liquidity will be in order, but only non-productive assets should be sold. The governor himself, a former Director General of the Bureau for Public Enterprises, also says critics shouldn't just take ideological positions, but rather propose solutions to help the country out of the quagmire. And a former president of Nigeria, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, is calling for the safekeeping of pension funds so that pensioners will have access to their money when they need it. Chief Obasanjo, who spoke at the opening ceremony of the World Pension Summit Africa Special in Abuja, is also of the opinion that trust must not be eliminated from the pension administrations of the fund.
You can see it doesn't make one of the major problems that we had to face is the problem of pension, which is pay as you go. In the civil service, we had a lot of unpaid pension. That was a problem. But that, with two other issues, or three other issues, pushed me to have to think and to move in the direction we moved. I am particularly happy that what we put in place about 10 years or so ago has now become so successful that we have well over 7 million people, employees, captured. We must, therefore, yes, bring about innovation, yes, bring about sustainability, but our innovation must be with caution, and our sustainability and innovation must be with security, so that anytime people, and one of the founders talk about trust, we must never reduce trust or eliminate trust from the pension fund. People must have trust that when they require money in their old age, in their retirement, from the money that they have contributed, the money will be there. And the second point is, how do we capture the self-employed? And the self-employed is very, very important.
Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, Nigeria's former president. Meanwhile, the current president, Mr. Muhammadu Buhari, has commended the introduction of the contributory pension scheme by the administration of President Obasanjo back in 2004. President Buhari, who applauded the initiative at this year's World Pension Summit in Abuja, added that the Nigerian Pension Commission has been mandated to enforce compliance by all public and private institutions. The president was represented at the event by the head of service, Mrs. Winifred Oyoita.
The Federal Republic of Nigeria.
12 years of its implementation, the contributory pension scheme has to a large extent stabilized our pension administration system. For instance, before the reform, Nigeria had huge pension liabilities in trillions of naira, but now the contributory pension scheme has generated over 5.83 trillion worth of pension assets as at 30th June 2016, which are invested in various sectors of the Nigerian economy. Most state governments have adopted the scheme and are at various levels of implementation. Our pensions regulator, PENCOM, is working assiduously to extend the net to cover the informal sector under the micro-pension scheme. PENCOM has been asked to step up its enforcement drive to ensure full compliance by public and private sector institutions in line with the enabling law. The federal government of Nigeria, on its part, will work to ensure that the required channels and support are put in place for pension funds and other institutional investors to provide the required financial intermediation in addressing Nigeria's infrastructure gaps. I hope other African countries and governments would follow suit.
Elsewhere, from the north central to the south, all appears now set for tomorrow's governorship elections in Edo State, with the commencement of the distribution of sensitive materials to the 18 local government areas of the state by the Independent National Electoral Commission. The resident electoral commissioner told Channels Television that the entire process so far is well on course. And this has been affirmed by one of the observers in the election and convener of the Election Situation Room, Mr. Clement Nwakwo.
While the Situation Room welcomes INEC's guidelines on simultaneous accreditation and voting, it would like to state that it is a constitutional right of voters to stay back and ensure their votes count and are counted. Accordingly, mandate protection is key to the success of the polls and should be guaranteed. Where INEC leadership fails to keep an eye on their staff during the collation process, the Situation Room will hold the Commission accountable. Situation Room also notes the statement of the Nigeria Police that it is prepared for the elections and has deployed adequate personnel and materials for the exercise. We also note that other arms of the security services have indicated their preparedness for the election. Situation Room's observation of the performance of the electoral process will include 1. The exercise of restraint in dealing with voters and avoidance of acts of intimidation, inappropriate use of force, and other acts capable of undermining the electoral process.